So good morning. And I appreciate the invite from Dr. Michelle to come to the Soft Skills for STEM workshop. She really needs another round of applause because this is filling such a critical void in the STEM community. Because STEM, we think about STEM as hard skills, and they are: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but an incredibly important complement to that are the so-called soft skills, because without soft skills, your career is not going anywhere. That is just a cold hard truth. You may be the most brilliant scientist in the room, but if you can't get along with people, you become from the most brilliant scientist to the person I don't want to work with. And that's just reality in the workplace, and I've seen it time and time again in the career. So these are incredibly important opportunities. And if I could just make a plug for the integrity workshop that they're posting on the website. Integrity, if you don't have it, people know it. And integrity, in my opinion, is at the intersection of trust, credibility, and respect. If you don't have integrity, people view you as not having integrity, you will not have their credibility, they will not trust you, and they will not respect you. So that's just a unsolicited plug to go back, and if you haven't, to visit that webinar. So NNSA is proud to be a sponsor of the Minority Servicing Institution Partnership Program, MISIP. We fund grants of about $19 million to the 6 consortiums that represent MISIP. And so what we're going to talk about is the mission of NNSA. What does NNSA do? And to demonstrate its strong affiliation with you, our current and future STEM leaders. Sound good? Okay. So, and I know some of these are eye charts, and let me just say up front that I'll be sending Dr. Michelle the electrons of this briefing so that she can get it out to everybody. Just hang it on the website so you'll have access to it. But this first one is a visual of our mission swim lanes, and as you can probably imagine, nuclear security is central to national security. And with all of the chaos in the world today, it's a much more complex world than it was 20 years ago when we had one known adversary, the USSR, and the complexities and the challenges in today's global environment are exponentially greater and more difficult. So to address those challenges, we are focused on the nuclear weapon stockpile, and I'll have a graphic showing up in a few minutes about what our stockpile is. So we manage the storage and the safety and the upkeep of the nuclear assets. Another critical mission area is reducing the threat of nuclear weapons to include radiological and chemical incidents, and so we have a very strong mission around that area. And then we also provide the energy for the U.S. Navy's nuclear fleet, so all the nuclear reactors for the Navy. And then you see some of the cross-cutting missions: science, technology, and engineering. So again, it's very central to our mission. The people and the infrastructure. Without the people, we couldn't do it. And then we have partnerships with our national laboratories, such as the Los Alamos National Laboratory, where we have the pleasure of working with Dr. Michelle, and several other labs, and I'll show you where those are in just a minute. Sorry about that. So just a little bit more about our core missions. Again, I'll share these later, but the underlying theme is STEM is part and parcel of our mission. So whether it's through nuclear deterrence, making sure nuclear capabilities don't get in the wrong hands, non-proliferation, to detect and dispose of dangerous nuclear and radiological materials, keeping our defense facilities safe. Again, the naval reactors, counterterrorism, counterproliferations is a very strong element of our mission, as is emergency operations. So if something were to happen, any kind of an incident, the emergency operations people are the ones that spring into action and mitigate any of the consequences from that incident. So hopefully this is not one of the eye charts. So our guiding principles, I first want to direct your attention to the two documents that are highlighted on the right. The first is the National Security Strategy. Has anyone read that? Please do. It was signed December of 2017. It is the U.S. government strategy on how we are going to secure our nation. And as you read that, it's really not that long. It's about 30 pages, which many of you are college students. You're thinking 30 pages, oh, that's nothing, right? So reading that, it'll give you a sense of what our administration's policies are. And then a document that just came out 2 weeks ago is the one on the bottom right, the Nuclear Posture Review. You can Google either of these documents, National Security Strategy, Nuclear Posture Review. The Nuclear Posture Review, or NPR, is actually a Department of Defense document because DoD has ultimate responsibility for keeping our nation safe. But NNSA was a co-author to that document, is mentioned many times in there, and STEM is prominent in both documents. Also, NNSA, we just got a new, essentially CEO, and what we call an administrator, Lisa Gordon Haggerty, and in her Senate confirmation hearings, because she's presidential appointed, Senate confirmed, she mentioned the importance of STEM and building the STEM workforce several times in her testimony. So it's just another way of foot stomping the affiliation that we have with STEM. So on the left-hand side are some of our major pillars, our guiding principles, what our strategic priorities are for this year and for next year, which is why we reference fiscal year 2019. So we have a number of nuclear facilities, nuclear weapons, components of nuclear parts, and many of those are aging, so we're spending a lot of investment in extending the life of those nuclear assets, conducting leading edge scientific research. As you will see in a chart coming up, the majority of our workforce are engineers and scientists, vast majority of them. I'm one of the outliers in the learning and development area. And where I do come in is recruiting, retaining, and developing our workforce, again with a special focus on STEM. Any questions so far? Okay. So the history of NNSA, and it's really more about the history of the nuclear phase. Does anybody want to take a guess on one of the origins of our entry into the nuclear world? Yes?
Atomic bomb?
Right. Atomic bomb. When was that?
45?
Yeah, right. Brought a quick end to World War II. And before that was the design of that capability called the Manhattan Project in the early 40s through the Atomic Energy Commission was formed. And this was really the predecessor to NNSA. NNSA itself is relatively new. It came into being in 2000. So as federal government agencies go, it's pretty young, but it has a precedence going, several decades before that. So we have, in the meantime, signed a number of treaties with various countries on controlling and limiting the nuclear stockpile. While we started testing nuclear materials above ground. And that stopped a few decades ago because of the environmental and other impacts that was causing. So now all of our nuclear testing is done underground and in very controlled environments. And if you ever get the opportunity to visit some of those sites, it's really pretty impressive in terms of the science and the technology behind that. And as I indicated a few minutes ago, at the height of the Cold War, we had this buildup from World War II, Cuban Missile Crisis. We got up to about 31,000 warheads, and especially after the Cold War ended, it has come down quite a bit to somewhat of a steady state of about just under 5,000 nuclear warheads. But that does not count all of the other radiological chemical work that we are focusing on as well. So here is an illustration of our field sites and our partner laboratories. How many of you have visited any of these sites? Which one did you go to? Sandia? Okay, great.
I'm a student in Atlanta.
Student Atlanta, woohoo.
Livermore and New Mexico.
Livermore and New Mexico. Anywhere else?
PNNL.
PNNL? Richland? In Richland or Seattle? Richland. It's kind of a small town, it's easy to forget. Oak Ridge? Great. So, as you can see, we are geographically dispersed, and each of these sites have a specific mission, but it's all part of the whole. And then you see some of the other graphics. NNSA's sites and labs comprise more area than the state of Delaware. It's a pretty vast enterprise, and you see some of the other numbers on the far right. And here, again, we talk about some of our challenge in terms of the aging infrastructure, and that we really do need to focus on modernization programs for both our assets and our facilities. NNSA's budget is continuing to rise. In fact, there is so much emphasis on the importance of nuclear security to our overall national security mission that last year, we've heard a lot about, with the new administration coming in, government shrinking, getting smaller. NNSA was one of 3 federal government agencies in the entire government whose budget went up. And so it's projected to be about $15 billion next year, mainly for the programs around modernization and continued functionality and operability of our infrastructure. Just a couple slides about the workforce, and one of the reasons why it's really important for NNSA to partner with you to recruit the next generation of leaders and experts in the STEM field is that about 44% of our workforce can retire in the next 5 years. And that's a pretty daunting challenge. So we really need to focus on building that workforce for the future with both the hard and the soft skills to continue to be successful in our mission. As I mentioned earlier, and it's kind of hard to see, but about a third of our workforce are engineers. We have another 30% that manage our safety and security and the other nuclear security programs, again, mostly scientists. So those are what we call our mission critical occupations because they represent the bulk of our workforce and really drive mission success. So by now I've made a few of these points in terms of NNSA and STEM, the inherent relationship between the two, which is why we make such an investment. And we also need to invest in a workforce that is representative of society. and to provide opportunities for those that have not had those opportunities in the past. So we are very much committed to MISIP and programs that I will also talk about in just a couple minutes. So we need that diversity in the workforce, and certainly MISIP is one of, and really the major pipeline that we're focusing on at this time. And so how many of you have had internships through the MSI program? A couple of you, good. So we promote internships within NNSA and with the Department of Energy so that we can keep that continuity of folks who earlier, when you were students in elementary or middle school and you had this inclination for science or technology or mathematics, that we have programs that keep you in that pipeline and all the way to transitioning into a STEM career. Selfishly, NNSA, but it's important to retain you and do what we can, in every way possible to keep you interested in this field, to give you developmental opportunities and also career opportunities for your STEM career and for your passion in the STEM field. So you're probably familiar with, the MISIP program, that these are our three main pillars for MISIP: to build capacity in research and infrastructure. We have an annual technical meeting with all of the minority servicing institutions, which, as was mentioned earlier, includes HBCUs, Hispanic servicing institutions, and we've just recently expanded it to tribal colleges and universities as well. Last year's, we did a number of assessments of the different consortium, and one that I was able to attend, for example, was at Norfolk State. Dr. Aurelia Williams, would you stand up, please? Stand up. Let's give her a hand. Awesome institution. So, she's just one of many examples of minority servicing institutions that are really dedicated and focusing on building their research capacity, which leads to student enrichment and development. So giving students the developmental opportunities in terms of, just not just an academic in terms of a textbook environment, but from a world-class research environment as well, to also facilitate that transition into the STEM workforce after you graduate. And then, continuing on in your career through being in environments that have those world-class resources, like our laboratories, like our field offices. And so this is just a map of where the various MSI institutions are located. And the ones here are some of our newer ones. Again, the tribal colleges and universities have recently come in. Another program that you may be interested in exploring as you're wrapping up your undergraduate degree is the NNSA Graduate Fellowship Program. So this is a 10 to 12 month fellowship for those who are recently or getting ready to graduate with either a master's or a doctorate. You actually work at NNSA sites. This lady here mentioned she's at PNNL, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. They administer this program for us, but we select competitively about 50 to 55 fellows from these schools, and just within the past 1 to 2 years, that outreach has included MSI institutions. And so we're starting to broaden the network of recruitment opportunities to the minority servicing institutions. And the upside for fellows is they can be offered a permanent federal job at the end of their fellowship. So they move from being a fellow to a federal employee. They can be picked up and hired non-competitively right into federal service with a pretty good starting salary, with a 15% raise in bonus pay in the first year, et cetera. And so it's a good recruitment pipeline. And also, and this is a new development for NNSA, the federal government has what they call a pathways program, which is a pathway into federal service from student to career. And what NNSA is now able to do is hire people through what's called the Recent College Graduates Program. So graduating, that includes undergraduate. Graduates within the 1 or 2 years of their graduation date can apply for and be hired directly into NNSA, into the federal government. And it's not just hire you in and forget about you, quite the contrary. As you can see in this first year, we focus on your individual development. We provide you a mentor, there's rotational assignments, and so there's a lot of interesting features to this program. And here too, after that first year, we can bring you right in as a permanent federal employee. So I wanted to make you aware of these opportunities that are available to you, that NNSA uses to keep you in your passion and working in the STEM field, and to again build our bench, if you will, of ready and capable talent to be the next Dave Rude, to be the next Dr. Michelle, the next Dr. Aurelia, et cetera. So just a couple closing thoughts. I found this image a couple weeks ago and I really like it. Your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. And so I would encourage you to take full advantage of the workshops that are being offered here today and tomorrow. And being a learning professional, I couldn't walk off the stage without just some tips around your personal and professional development. Learning never stops. Doesn't stop with your degree. It's just a continual, ongoing journey. We are always learning. We are always growing. You can see a couple of explicit references to soft skills: being professional, being respectful, how we communicate, those kinds of things. And so all of that is very important. And lastly, I created a short online survey for you to use if you want to follow up with NNSA on anything that I've talked about. If you want to follow up on MISIP, on NGFP, on Pathways, this is a short SurveyMonkey link. You can maybe just write it down. And again, however, I'll be sending the electrons and it'll be posted on the website. But we stood up this online survey specifically for you to express your interest and then when you submit that survey, someone from NNSA will personally reach out to you and continue that dialogue with you to talk about what your needs are, what your interests are, and how NNSA can be of help. We wanted to make that opportunity for you because I can hand business cards, they get lost, I have some with me, but just send us the survey and then we just have that permanent link between NNSA as an agency and you as an individual. So any questions for me? I'll be here the whole conference and we'll be participating in the closing session tomorrow along with several other folks. But any questions at the time? Yes, sir.
Yes, does the intern in the fellowship is only for the U.S. citizen or could be for anybody?
I believe you do need to be a U.S. citizen, but I'll check that out. I do believe that's one of the criteria.
I want to say thank you for the program. It was very good. I have just one suggestion. This summer internship really changed the life of the student. I want to say thank you, for last year and the previous year, I sent about 4 or 5 students to California, Livermore, and New Mexico. When they come back at the end of the summer, believe me, they change, all of them. So if it is possible, please help this student, especially HBCU, and don't pick up the student from what they call those schools with the good resources. Also consider those schools with no resources.
Right.
I appreciate your help.
Thank you for that, and we've had about 800 interns participate in that program since its beginning. We just, the more the merrier. The more people who sign up for these internship opportunities, the more they get exposed to the working world of NNSA and the Department of Energy, and then that's also, nothing beats a firsthand experience. You can hear from somebody else, you can read someone's social media post, but until you've done it yourself, I think that's really where you strike gold. So, well, thank you, and I look forward to working with you throughout the conference.